Sports psychology is focused on understanding the mind and behaviour in sport. So we're interested in how an athlete's psychology affects their participation in sport, as well as how that participation affects them, so things like their mental health and their well-being. And particularly once an athlete starts to take their sport quite seriously, they develop what we call an athletic identity, and that means that they start to define themselves on the basis of their participation in sport. And that then means that their successes and their failures will influence how they feel about themselves, and obviously that can have an impact on them in terms of their well-being, and we obviously want to try and make sure that their participation in sport is a positive experience, as well as trying to achieve optimal performance.
I started taking it seriously about 6 years ago, when I got my para classification card. I did my first international about 5 years ago. About 4 years ago I did a talent spotting and did really well there. And I suppose getting results like that, it sort of boosts your confidence, and you sort of think, yeah, I can do this. I first thought about getting a sports psychologist because I was finding it hard to separate my riding and my home life. So like, say, if I'd had a bad ride, that'd be it for the rest of the day. Or like if I'd had a good ride, then I'd be happy for the rest of the day. I couldn't sort of separate the two. And I think I just felt a bit defeated.
And what you're seeing today is we're working on a programme which is called a Mindfulness Acceptance and Commitment programme. And that's very much come from mainstream psychology. And the theory behind that is that we have so far, in sports psychology and in psychology generally, there's been a lot of focus on the cognitive behavioural approach. Now that has typically meant that we've tried to help athletes, for example, deal with their thoughts and emotions by suppressing them. But the research more recently has suggested that that's not a particularly effective way of doing things, because actually when we try and suppress thoughts and emotions, we actually make it more likely by engaging in an automatic scanning process. This is something called the ironic processing theory, that once that we scan our bodies for evidence that those thoughts and emotions that we're trying to suppress are there, and by doing that we actually make them more likely to come into awareness. So this new approach is trying to get athletes to accept those kind of thoughts and emotions as a natural part of the human experience, rather than trying to change them. So Catherine, I know since the last time we spoke that you've been working on the exercises that we talked about in relation to the mindfulness practice. Can you tell me how you've been getting on with those?
I'm noticing quicker when my thoughts are going off. So whereas before I just let them go on, like just let them go, but now I'm sort of just letting them pass by and refocusing. Because sometimes, especially if it's a negative thought, unfortunately, sometimes I'll run with it. I'll be like, and then, like you said the other day, sometimes I'll start to believe they're true. But diffusing from them, like if I recognise that they're happening, and then I just let them go, then and refocus on something else, and it's much better for my riding.
An equestrian sport is quite particular in that it involves this interaction between the horse and the rider, and that relationship is very important. It may be that you could look at it in a similar way to an athlete competing with any kind of teammate, except that obviously this teammate doesn't understand language. They don't see the intrinsic value of the competition or the training that they're going through. They're often very cooperative, but they're also an instinctive prey animal who doesn't always come out the same every day. They can be unpredictable, and that obviously throws up additional demands for the rider. So they really need to make sure that their behaviour is driven by the correct values rather than being emotion driven. Now you've also had a competition this week, is that right?
Yeah, Wednesday.
And how did that go?
Much better for doing the mindfulness exercises, I think, because he was very excited and a bit not quite focused on me as I would have liked him to be. And before, if he'd have done that, like the last time I hadn't competed him in a while and we took him out, I sort of got faster and faster with him, like my thoughts. So I was like, go down centre line, I was thinking, halt, I'll go. Whereas on Wednesday, if he was rushing a bit, I'd sort of think, okay, take a deep breath, and then just like maybe do a walk transition to make sure he's listening to me, or like just make sure that I wasn't following in his path. Even though he was still a bit excited, I managed to ride him I was more focused on riding because I wasn't letting my thoughts trail off.
We try to help the athlete to take a step back from what's going on in their mind. So we use various what we call mindfulness exercises to help the athlete to be focused on the present moment and to start to develop an awareness of what their mind typically does. Now I'd like you to focus your attention on your surroundings. So notice any sounds that are occurring. Now focus your attention on the areas where your body touches the saddle. Notice the physical sensations that occur from your contact with the horse and with the saddle. Don't try to alter these sensations, just notice them and then let them go. Now let your thoughts focus on why you're completing this exercise. See if you can notice any doubts. Without doing anything about them, just notice them.
When you said think about your doubts, I didn't have any, and then I almost started to wondering what I should be doubting.
So that was one of the things that you struggled to let go of?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what this exercise was about. The reason that this kind of exercise is useful is because it tunes you in to focusing on the present, on what's going on right now. So if you think, when you come to a competition or you start a training session, this kind of thing is quite useful just to get what we call your mind and your body in the same place.
Yeah.
Okay, Catherine, so this last exercise that we're going to do is what we call an effectiveness or a willingness exercise. So what I'm going to be asking you to do is to bend in and out of the cones without using your hands. So you're using your legs to steer, and all I want you to do is be mindful of the task.
Go through them again.
And also to be thinking about your values in terms of how you want to ride, and this idea of our behaviours being driven by our values rather than our emotions. And then afterwards I'm going to ask you for your reflections.
After I'd done it the second time and you go around again, I was sort of a bit oh, but he's done it once. I'm no, he's not going to do it again.
So you didn't want to do it?
No, because he'd done it fine once, and I was like, he's not going to do it as well again.
At any time did you feel that you wanted to act in the service of your emotions? So because you were frustrated?
Yeah, I wanted to stop. Once he'd done it well, I was like, that's it.
The purpose of this exercise, as I said, is this idea of developing a willingness to experience the undesirable. If that happened in a test because of a mistake or that something's not gone quite right, you're able to notice that you're feeling frustrated and then choose not to quit, so maybe to give up on that movement and move on to the next one, but to carry on.
And I think maybe that's what I would have done before doing these exercises, because I'd have let the negative thoughts get carried away. I'd give up.
And in relation to the mindfulness acceptance commitment approach, that has very much been adopted from mainstream psychology, and there's a whole host of evidence to suggest that it helps with emotional disorders, for example. And it's now being applied to sport, and we've got evidence that it helps to improve concentration, that it helps to promote performance, and that it helps to direct athletes to make sure that they're working towards their goals rather than their emotions.
My main ambition is 2016 Paralympics. I've got many goals and processes along the way, a lot of hard work. For me, once those thought processes are where they should be when I'm on the horse, that everything else seems to fall in line. The best results I've had was when I've been focused and thought, and that's a result of sports psychology.